Are you ready for history's strangest truths? The pyramids weren't built by slaves. A royal official once killed himself over a failed fish order, and an astronomer died because he refused to excuse himself to the bathroom. This is ChronoVeil, where real history is stranger than fiction. Forget what you learned in school. Our journey into the bizarre corners of time begins now. Let's begin.
All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to talk about some of those big facts from history that we all just kind of know. Except it turns out a lot of them are totally wrong. So get ready, because we are about to bust some of history's greatest myths. Let's start with a big one. Close your eyes and picture ancient Egypt. What do you see? I bet for a lot of you, it's this image, right? Thousands upon thousands of slaves toiling under the hot sun to build the Great Pyramids. But what if that whole picture we have in our heads is basically just a Hollywood invention?
So, yeah, our first stop is ancient Egypt, because the people who built these unbelievable monuments, they weren't who you think. And honestly, the real story is way more fascinating than the myth.
I mean, the movie version is super dramatic, isn't it? You've got tens of thousands of people starving, working until they literally drop, all under the crack of a whip. It's this really powerful, brutal image, but it's an image that pretty much all historians and archaeologists now agree is just plain false. And this is where the story gets completely flipped on its head. We're not talking about slaves being forced into unpaid labor at all. The reality? These were conscripted workers. It was a form of civic duty, kind of like a national service. It was how they paid their taxes, with labor. And far from being starved and neglected, they were actually treated like valued, skilled professionals. I mean, you had to be, to get the job done. And we've got the proof. This system was called corvée duty, and it mostly involved farmers who couldn't work their fields anyway because the Nile was flooding. Archaeologists have dug up entire villages that were built just for these workers. And get this, they found evidence, like animal bones and bread jars, showing that these guys were eating really well. They even had rights. We have written proof from 1170 BC of artisans going on strike because they weren't getting their promised food rations, and they won. Let's be real, slaves don't usually win labor disputes.
Okay, so from the builders of the ancient world, let's jump over to its most famous warriors. Our next myth takes us to Sparta, and, you guessed it, the truth here is just as surprising.
We've all heard this story, right? Especially from movies like 300. It's at the very core of the Spartan legend, this idea that they practiced state-sponsored eugenics, that they would inspect newborn babies and just discard any that were seen as weak or imperfect, all to create this super race of warriors. It's a really chilling, brutal idea. But once again, when you actually look for the evidence, the myth just falls apart. See, Sparta didn't really have a professional army like we imagine it. Their whole intense, brutal training system was designed to create disciplined, respectable citizens who could defend their home, not just mindless killing machines obsessed with war. And that whole story about the babies? There is zero, and I mean zero, archaeological evidence for it. So you have to ask, where did this story even come from? Well, it all comes down to one guy, the Roman historian Plutarch. But just look at this timeline. He was writing about the Spartans a whopping 600 years after their civilization was at its peak. That's like someone today writing a first-hand account of what life was like for William the Conqueror. It just doesn't add up. And this is really the nail in the coffin for this myth. Not only is the source writing centuries later, but when archaeologists actually excavated this supposed disposal site for these infants, they found adult remains, sure, but not a single infant bone. It's way more likely that this was just a piece of historical propaganda, a nasty story written long after the fact that just happened to stay. All right, for our final myth, let's step into one of the most iconic arenas in all of history, the Roman Colosseum. You might want to buckle up, because we're about to challenge everything you thought you knew about gladiators. You can picture it, can't you? The emperor in his box, the crowd roaring, and then the merciless thumbs down. We're all taught that every gladiator fight was this bloody spectacle where only one person could possibly walk out alive. But that wasn't really the point at all. Think of it less like a fight to the death and more like the UFC of the ancient world. Seriously, there were about 30 different types of gladiators, and each one was a specialist, with their own unique weapons and armor. You had guys with 2 swords, fighters with tridents and nets. This was a sport that required incredible skill. And really, it all came down to basic economics. These gladiators were incredibly expensive investments. Their owners and managers wanted to keep them alive to fight another day and make more money. They even had referees, often retired gladiators themselves, who would enforce rules and stop a fight before someone was killed. And while some were definitely slaves, many were professional athletes, fighting for fame, glory, and a whole lot of money. Death was always a risk for sure, but it was not the goal.
So, after all this, after debunking stories about pyramids and Spartans and gladiators, it kind of begs a bigger question, doesn't it? If these stories are so wrong, why are they so powerful? Why do we all keep believing them?
Well, it usually comes down to a few things. First, sensationalism. A pharaoh's curse is just a much cooler story than an infected mosquito bite, which is the real theory behind Tutankhamun's death. Propaganda is another big one. It was way easier for later Romans to just blame the hated Emperor Nero for the Great Fire of Rome, even though he wasn't even there. Then you just have time. Over hundreds or thousands of years, details get lost. And of course, there's pop culture. Movies and TV shows lock these really exciting but totally inaccurate images into our brains.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, if we can get so much wrong about the distant past, what stories are we telling ourselves right now that future generations are going to have to correct? What history are we accidentally making up today?
History hides strange truths. The pyramids weren't built by slaves. A royal official died in shame over a failed fish order, and an astronomer perished for refusing to leave the table for the bathroom. This is ChronoVeil, where real history beats fiction. Thanks for watching. See you next time.